Hi friends, I'm Tash and I welcome you to a new lesson. Sometimes when we are talking to people or when we meet people under social or business circumstances, it becomes very important to address people correctly. I'm sure many of us actually find it a little difficult or not appropriately we address people at times. Because addressing people is a matter of respect. It shows how respectful you are of the other person's position. Okay, so let's get started. Tips to address people. The first one says, if in doubt, keep it formal. This is the safest way. If you are doubtful about a person's position or how you would address him or her, always keep it formal, because when you keep it formal, there are no chances of you to make a mistake. For instance, if you meet someone, you could simply say, hello sir, how are you? Or you could say, you could introduce yourself and just say sir or madam to the other person on the other side. However, if the person wants you not to be so formal, he would say, hey, I'm Bill, call me Bill. And then you would, of course, you would again start addressing him the way he wants you to address him. So you know exactly, you kind of gain confidence of the person when you keep it formal, because there are very less chances of you offending someone. Okay, so that's about, if in doubt, keep it formal, to be on the safer side. The next one says, use salutation with last names. Many times I have heard people say, Mr. Peter, Mr. Robert, Miss Carol, Miss Rachel. That is wrong. You can never ever use salutations with the first name. Salutations are always used with last names. Let's say, for example, Mrs. Robertson. Okay, Mrs. Robertson. If I say, good morning, Mrs. Robertson. Or if she does not like you to call you Mrs. Robertson or addressing her with her last name, she could say, please call me Shirley. So it's fine. So you know how to address her the next time you meet her. However, you need to remember that your salutations always need to be with the last name and not with the first name. Yeah. The next one says, use professional address where applicable. Many times we meet doctors, professors, okay? It is very important that you understand or you are aware of their titles, because their titles relate to their profession. And it is quite important for them to be called or to be addressed correctly. If you are meeting a doctor, it is always important to call him doctor. Or if you're meeting a professor, you always need to say, hello professor or hello doctor. Of course, if you do not know their titles, you are going to say sir or ma'am. However, trust me friends, they'll be very happy if you call them doctor or professor. So remember, the next time you meet a doctor or a professor, if you are a little confused of their titles, try and maybe take information from somebody, but ensure that you address them correctly. So you say doctor or you say professor. Okay. Let's see, if you get a chance to meet somebody from the royal family, you should always say your majesty. Okay. I'm sure we don't meet such people every day. However, if you and I are lucky to meet one of them, you could always say your majesty. Your majesty or your highness. Okay. The next one says, ask if not sure. Again, here I want you to be very safe. If you are in a doubt, always ask the other person how he or she may want to be addressed, whether it is a face-to-face conversation or whether you are on a phone. Always try to ask. Let's say, and also if you are not sure over here, like I mentioned here, keep it formal. You could simply say, hello ma'am, or you could say, you could always use the last name like we spoke over here, the last name and the salutation. You may ask, may I call you Rachel? Or is it okay if I call you Rachel? If the person is, of course, fine with calling her or him by the first name, she or he will say, yes, go ahead. And then you know the next time when you meet him or her, you know how she or he needs to be addressed. So, if you are not sure, please ask. It really does not harm to ask someone instead of being offending or offensive. Okay? The next one says, only first or last names. There are many situations or there are many occasions. Let's take, for instance, a wedding. If you have gone for a wedding and you are introducing yourself to a group of people, you always need to use, not really always, but it's better to use your first name. You could say, hi, I'm Carol, this is my husband James. So when you are talking to people on a table or a group of people in a wedding or an informal situation, always try and use your first name. This is so that you build a good rapport, and the situation is kept very light, because in a wedding you don't want serious faces, right? So you say that, you say, hi, I'm Carol and this is my husband James. Let's say in a conference, a business conference. There, of course, you can say, or you cannot say that, hey, this is Carol, you can't do that. So there you always use Mr. Peterson, Mr. Carl, or Mr. Robertson. You always use Mr. and the last names. However, it's more easier with women. You can always address women by saying Miss. Of course, it's not possible for you and me to know always whether the woman on the other side is married or no. However, it's not offensive if you call her Miss, okay? So with women, that's a good thing. You can always call them Miss, whether married or unmarried. And the last point says, while corresponding, be formal. By corresponding, I mean here email or letters. When you are writing an email, of course, if you're writing to someone new, you would say, dear sir, or dear ma'am, okay? Or you always need to keep it formal. You can always say, dear sir, or if you know the name, you could say, dear Mr. Parker, or dear Miss Rachel, or dear Miss Carol, because you do not know who the person on the other side is while you're corresponding. However, when the person writes back to you, he or she could mention somewhere in their correspondence that you may call me so and so. You may call me by this name. And then, of course, unless directed, do not use informal names or informal ways of addressing people. In fact, all these points lead to show what kind of a person you are also, because when you know how to be or where to be formal in which place, it definitely shows what good or what kind of a professional or what kind of a person you are. So whenever you are in a professional situation or in a formal situation, try and be as formal as you can. Of course, there are situations vary. So you know that in a formal situation, you need to use salutations, names, the last names especially. And in an informal situation, you can always use first names. So friends, we have seen tips to address people. I'm sure you're going to come across so many people. You do come across people every day. However, we don't want to be offensive, right? So please ensure that you use some of these tips, because they're definitely going to help you in your conversation and your correspondences. Yeah, so thanks for watching. That's all from me for now. Use these tips, keep watching, keep learning, and enjoy yourself. Take care. See you from me for now.